Welcome to the Tea Time Podcast, where it's all about taking a few healthy minutes each day just for you, with your host, Sharissa Bradley.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode for the Tea Time Podcast. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited that you are here. We are continuing our series for the Journey Back to Health book. We are on chapter 3, which is all about how the brain is wired to follow specific pathways that we've set for it. For example, when we do something very often and it becomes this habitual pattern that we follow, it requires very little energy from the brain to actually do that activity. The example that I give in the book is like when you are on your way home from work and you're just driving and you don't even really realize like how you got from the work to your house, and it's just become this like habitual process that you don't even have to actually think about any of the things that you are doing. That is what this chapter in the book is all about. And what it really boils down to is what we do often is what is going to stick. So when I'm thinking about my own specific life, when I'm dealing with this chapter, I'm trying to incorporate a little bit more grace in my life because the patterns that I've had around food have been there since literally I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. So the brain is actually going to just continue to take these really short pathways no matter what I do or what I want to do. Something that's also really interesting to me about the brain is that we can actually argue with ourselves because we have these split hemispheres, and we can actually have these conversations and these battles with ourselves on what it is that we're trying to do. So you could have a new goal or a new habit that you're trying to create, but the old habits and the old patterns are going to show up and derail progress at every turn if we're not constantly vigilant when it comes to our new habits and our new goals. And the point of this chapter is really to just give a little bit of grace and give a little bit of understanding, because truly it is incredibly difficult to change. Another interesting example that I give in the book is this research that was done a long time ago using rats, and they wanted to know how quickly the rats would be able to get to the thing that they were trying to get in the maze. Maybe it was a little treat. And what they actually were monitoring is brain activity. So these rats in the maze, they're hooked up to all these electrodes. They're trying to study brain activity. And they watched the very first time that they put that rat in the maze, it's lighting up almost every single area in the brain for this rat to find its way through the maze, to find every single turn, every single corner. It's smelling, it's looking, it's thinking, it's got all these activity centers lit up. And that is very similar to us when we're trying to create a new habit. It requires a tremendous amount of energy, not just physically, but mental energy. The brain is lit up because it is being used in all of these ways whenever we're trying to do something so simple and so new, even if it's something like adding a walk into your daily habits or adding or changing the way your food habits are. So the rat in the maze, over time, as it was put in the same position over and over and over again, what the researchers saw was a lack of activity lighting up as the rats were put in the maze more and more often. So what you can think of this as the more you do an activity, the less energy that it actually requires, because your brain is creating a pathway to make that easy for itself to then repeat it. So when you're first starting out on something new and you're first trying to do a new habit or a new routine or some new structure, it's going to take so much energy. Your brain is actually going to be completely exhausted by the task. Even if it's a tiny little task that you're just trying to add this new little simple routine, maybe it's adding a new drink in the morning or a new bedtime routine, whatever it is, you can fully expect for that first probably week, 2 weeks, if not, it takes up to 20 to 60 days to form a habit. So you can expect for that first couple of weeks that you're incorporating a new habit to feel exhausting or mentally taxing, because that is legitimately what is happening. When we are trying to make a new thing, we are just the rat in the maze with every single center lit up while we are trying to navigate new fields to get to whatever it is that we're looking for in our outcome. But when we continue to do it over and over and over again, we are also the rat in the maze with less lit up areas because the brain is requiring less fuel and less energy. So I will encourage you, if you are trying to do a new habit or a new routine, to just recognize the fact that your brain is going to actually require more sleep, more nutrients, more water, more of all of these other support things that we can do for ourselves while we are trying to build the new habit. And if it's taking you a really long time, understand that the brain is capable literally of arguing with itself for good and bad reasoning. So if you have a goal, if you're trying to reach towards something and you've got it like written out for yourself, like for me, it's like eating regular meals without having any nausea, without having any bad thoughts around eating or consuming nutrients. So I'm working towards this goal myself, and all of this energy is getting poured into that goal. And I can tell you very much that it is so tiring and so exhausting to try to work towards something new. And it is kind of like the forefront of the mind at all times. If you are working on a goal, it is challenging and it is difficult. And in next week's episode, we're going to really dive into actually what it takes to create and build new habits. But for this week, we're just focusing on the fact that this is a challenging thing. And anytime we try to do something new, we have to recognize that the brain is wired to find the fastest and easiest solution possible to conserve energy. So if you are trying to create a new pattern or a new habit for yourself, it's going against the brain's kind of grain or that natural highway that we've created by persistent habits over time, even if they're not good habits, right? We're trying to maybe break free from some of these old habits. Like for myself, I'm trying to break free from the habit of just letting my hunger kind of go because of the overwhelmed try to beat the thinking and the stories that I'm telling myself and the emotional toll that it takes to kind of change pathways. And when we're doing this work, it's not easy. And it's so not easy that even the brain is requiring more energy and more nutrients and just even more time sleeping, more time resting because you're doing something so brand new. So I will encourage you, if you're trying something new and you're feeling exhausted by it, you're probably exactly where you're supposed to. Just to give you a little update, I am still kind of working through my stories that I've shared with you last week, and I'm working on creating new healthy habits for myself. And it's taking so much time, and I'm having to have so much grace because I don't feel like I'm going as quickly as I want to be. I don't feel like I'm getting the milestones that I was hoping to be at by this point. And what I'm still doing is digging through these old stories and these old habits and what led me to this in the first place. And I'm working on undoing all of that. But like I said, the brain is wired this way. And so it's taking a tremendous amount of mental energy, which is even equating to things like more headaches and more exhaustion because I'm actively kind of going against what it is that was there for all of these years. So chapter 3, if you're following along, we're finally talking about how to break free of these habits that we've created so that we can finally create better and more life-sustaining habits for the future. Some of the action steps at the end of this chapter are really key because in order to make positive changes in your life, you have to first really evaluate exactly where you are now. And you can be honest with yourself because this isn't for anybody else. This is just for you. And so I encourage you to follow the action steps at the back of this chapter. They are things like write a detailed description of your current daily routine. And this might just be like keeping a log or a journal of what you do every day for a week or maybe even 3 or 4 days. For myself, every day of the week is a little bit different on what expectations it holds. If that's what your week is like, then I would encourage you to keep a 7-day journal and just see, what are your daily habits? What does your day look like? Do you have any space in your day to make these positive changes? And maybe you even have to kind of back up a little bit and do really minute changes because your day is too full to try to incorporate even one more new thing. Now, when you are trying to change a habit, it's going to take a ton of mental energy. So if you don't have the time and the space for the mental energy to make those habit changes, give yourself a little bit of grace because things are challenging right now, and that is okay. If you can do a tiny little micro habit or even habit stacking, which we're going to talk about next week, where you can do something that you already do, like brushing your teeth in the morning, and add something to that time slot. So it's not really like coming out of nowhere where you're adding this new thing. Maybe you read for a little bit every night before you go to bed, and you could easily add like a little journaling habit right before you do your reading. That's called habit stacking, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week. But for the purpose of this episode, I would encourage you to just sort of start tracking things over the next week before we get to that episode on bringing in new habits. See where you have space in your life. Or if your life is so crowded that you can see why you really don't have the time or the energy to do new things because there really isn't space in your life. And maybe instead of adding a new habit, you actually have to evaluate your priorities to make space and make time in your life to create new habits. So where in your daily routine can you make adjustments for your health goals? And if you can clearly see that from your tracking over the week, then amazing. But if not, then start asking yourself, what is the most important thing for you in your day? And how can you fit good habits in that have your best interests, like longevity and health and sustainable health for a lifetime? How can you add those little bits in? And then what if you could take a few minutes and just write like what your most ideal routine would be? If you could schedule out every single minute of your day to be like your dream day, what would that look like? And is there any overlap in the life that you have now? It's okay if there isn't, and it's okay if you want a completely different life. You just have to see that each one of those differences is going to take a little tiny habit, and each one of those habits is going to take 20 to 60 days. So if your whole entire routine is different than what you have now, you can kind of give yourself a timeline going forward of, I want to be this person who has these 10, 15 habits in a day that are different from my own. That might take a year or 2 or 3 years to incorporate all of that, because it really takes time to incorporate a habit, and you really have to do like one at a time. We're going to dig more into that next week, but if you can start to just sort of journal and see what sort of adjustments that you can make to your routine and see what your routine actually is. Maybe one of the biggest challenges in putting new good habits into your daily life is that there isn't space in your daily life for any more habits. And I have definitely come to that conclusion myself many times. And the way that I have combated that is by really prioritizing and taking things out and learning how to say no and learning how to have really clear boundaries around my time where it comes to specifically feeling and being the most healthy that I can possibly be. Sometimes that requires saying no to things, even if it is something that I maybe would want to do, but it doesn't support my health goals. So I would encourage you to just kind of look at your habits, look at your routines, see if there's anything in your life that you specifically want to be different, and then give yourself the grace to develop that habit over time, and recognize that when we are developing a new habit, it takes so much mental energy that you may not have that right now. You may not have the space for that right now, but you could set that goal, and you could set the goal to create space for yourself to build that habit. And just ultimately give yourself the grace. You're already here. You're already listening to someone share about health and about longevity. So I know that you're already on the right path. And I'm just so excited to get to next week's chapter 4, talking about habits, because it is so important to understand that we can't just jump into 2, 3, 4 things at one time. The brain doesn't have the capacity to build that in long term. We have to take these things one step at a time, little baby steps to get to the best future and to the best routine that would feel so good to us on an everyday basis. I hope you're all having a really beautiful week, and I'm excited to share with you next week all about habits. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you for spending your tea time with us. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.